All right, let's get to it.
It's the Bird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans?
He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Bird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome into the Bird Reboot podcast. We've got only one more of these shows that you're going to be seeing that's actually covering real Cardinals football for the rest of the year. We're here to talk about our final Cardinals game of 2025. For those of you watching on New Year's Eve, spending some time with us on the holiday as 2026 approaches. Happy New Year to you guys. It has not been a very happy year for Arizona Cardinals fans, Marcos. There's optimism, at least, that 2026 can be a better year, but a lot of cautious optimism considering the fact that maybe Jonathan Gannon is safe. We're here to break it all down for you. And Marcos, how are you doing today? As Cardinals fans, we've had it rough. It did not get any easier after the Arizona Cardinals dropped another game, at least to the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. It was not quite over from the get-go, but the Cardinals got down 13-0, ended up losing 37-14. When we watched the tape, it was not pretty whatsoever. It's something that I think a lot of Cardinals fans are pretty skeptical of, the fact that maybe we need to be considering this regime as safe heading into 2026.
Well, I every single time we jump onto this podcast and I see the intro, that whatever I said in that situation where I said he's going to bring over his philosophy, it should make it better. I think back at that and I think to myself, that's before we knew what was going to happen, where this trajectory was going to go, what kind of defense was going to be brought over. So I am feeling apathetic when it comes to like the Cardinals and the direction that they're going, because it's only so many times you could see the same product. You could like witness what's going on. You could say, hey, this is the problem with that, or this continues to be the problem with this, and nothing seems to be getting addressed when it comes to it. So I think that like the tea leaves are saying that Jonathan Gannon might be here for another year, and it's just, to me, I'm like, what's there to look forward to when it comes to that, the news on Monday?
Yeah, it's something at least where the comparison that I've looked at has been Matt Eberflus of the Chicago Bears. And when you talk about the Chicago Bears, they kept him entering a year where they were one of the worst teams in the NFL, not the worst team in the NFL. They ended up getting the Caleb Williams pick with a trade that they made with the Carolina Panthers. Ended up, of course, as we all know, had a rough, terrible rookie season, at least, with a rough change at offensive coordinator. Shane Waldron ended up getting fired before the season was done. Bears fans were all saying, hey, you got to get rid of this guy. News out of Bears Nation was he was not going to ever fire a coach in the middle of the season. And as it stands right now, Jonathan Gannon and Matt Eberflus have nearly identical records heading in. It's going to really depend, I think, Marcos, on who that OC hire is for Arizona next year, because from what it seems like, defense is staying. We don't know if Jonathan Gannon's going to call plays or not, but we can at least talk a little bit about this game because it was a rough watch. What were some of the things that stood out to you? There was a couple of players to me that stood out as far as just having some of the worst games that they've had thus far in perhaps some of their careers, and some due to injury being elevated into the spotlight. Others, it was a rough watch for Cardinals fans as the Bengals got up to a 23-7 lead after a bunch of missed tackles, and it really did not get much prettier from there. The second half, the Bengals even let up a bit, probably put up at least 40, 45 points if they had wanted to on the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, if we're going to go through clips, I'll point it out, but in this situation, what really stood out to me was the combination between Hall and Denzel Burke. They were primarily lined up at the same side, and obviously you're going to do that because you're going to keep Will Johnson one-on-one to the opposite side of the formation. If it's a 3-by-1 formation, you want most likely to have your best cornerback was going to be in a Meg situation to be one-on-one, which would be Will Johnson. You're not going to put Denzel Burke over there. And so these two guys, their communication just was not on par with each other. And it shows because they haven't had any snaps together. They haven't had any live snaps to be able to handle these situations. So that in itself like stood out quite a bit. I gave up it was a touchdown. It was an embarrassing catch by the offensive lineman, and then it was a big catch by T. Higgins that you gave up in that scenario because of communication alone.
Yeah, it's been something at least that's been rough to see. It was a rough game, I think, at least for several Cardinals players. We continued to see that Darius Robinson struggled at least off of the line. Like you brought up, at least it was just one of those places where Keaton Crawford left with an injury. We ended up seeing Darren Hall have one of the lower ranked and lower graded Cardinals games. He looked like he just was struggling to be able to tackle in space. Ended up with, I believe it was the second lowest tackling grade on the season. It was Jaden Davis who ended up taking over a little bit near the end of the game when the Bengals were resting their starters. Joe Flacco ended up coming into the game at one point. Just that's how bad the blowout got. And it was a rough game for Adrian Taylor Demerson as well. I think there was a couple of tackles that he would have liked to have had back. There was some times where it seemed like what a lot of the Cardinals were doing was playing stuff back. The Bengals were then taking some of that open space, and in that space, you've got to be able to tackle because you are short of the line to gain. We've talked a lot about how this Cardinals team has essentially had this soft zone coverage. They refuse to play a lot of this man coverage looks for the most part, and it makes some sense against a team like the Bengals where you're down Buda Baker. You are down a lot of starting corners. Max Melton is still not getting any starting snaps. He's playing special teams only, and you're having to trot out there with the likes of Darren Hall having to start because of injuries that you've seen to Garrett Williams. It was also, I think, not the best game for Will Johnson. There was some times where it seemed like he had really tight coverage and it was just a great catch by the receiver. Other times didn't seem like he was engaged as much. Feels like you were looking at the doldrums. The defense is what we're talking about, but on the offensive side of the ball, pretty brutal. Cardinals only had a second, I believe it was, touchdown to Trey McBride they put up in the end of the game. They went 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out repeatedly. There was a lot of times where you could see that they struggled to run the ball against a Bengals team that does not tackle, does not run the ball very well. I don't know how much more we're going to have to talk about this, Marcos. I think most Cardinals fans, at least, have reached their breaking point. And like we've talked about with Jonathan Gannon, I could see it being one of those places where if there are clean houses, fans will be content because it's been a rough season. If there is offensive coordinator and special teams replacements, people are going to wonder, why is the head coach get a pass? People are going to ask and say, why is it that out of all of this, the narrative seems to be, oh, we didn't have the right quarterback. Like, we just moved on from Kyler Murray. We don't have anything with Jacoby Brissett. The offense runs better with Jacoby. We're just, not putting up 20 points a game. Cardinals have not scored 30 points a game. They're the only team in the NFL this season to not put up 30 points per game. That is something where Drew Petzing should have already been moved on from. But as we know with Jonathan Gannon, loyal guy, he's going to stick with his guys, going to prop his guys up until he doesn't. It's just a spot where they're going to be saying that they need another quarterback, but you're probably going to be bringing a rookie into this situation. I don't think that's a recipe to suddenly go from being low scoring in points with some good receiving talent to high end of points. It was also a disappointing game for Marvin Harrison Jr. He had one target where he wasn't able to corral it, ended up hurting his opposite foot, is out now for the remainder of the season. He ends up finishing with just over 600 receiving yards on the season after missing multiple games. Michael Wilson, he's only about 93 yards away from 1,000 yards on the season. So despite not having much early usage, he actually is one of the few bright spots, along with Isaiah Adams, who was the second highest graded Cardinal, looked very good in the game that he played against the Bengals. These are some building blocks to work off of. It feels like there's a little bit you can do to right the ship, but this defense, Marcos, it is just brutal as far as watching the effort out there, the missed tackles. Some of the plays that I see, Darius Robinson is getting blocked out of the picture to where you're able to see the Bengals then run the ball straight up the middle on the Arizona Cardinals. And then when we're talking about what really was the story of this game, it was just seeing Darren Hall get exposed. We saw a couple of nice plays in coverage from Denzel Burke. He had times where you could tell clearly he's not the guy that you need to be able to have on the likes of a Jamar Chase, on the likes of a T. Higgins. One such play I can think of, it was on the goal line, and there was Adrian Taylor Demerson in the middle. He was the inside coverage. He ran to the inside. So you've got Darren Hall with outside coverage. Nobody's on the inside. Quick slant route. We'll see if we can pull up that film in a little bit for just to be able to look at it. But it was one of those cases where you talk about mental errors and talk about just the fact of you need to, at some point, Jonathan Gannon, Nick Rollis, mix up your defense, put Will Johnson where he's supposed to be over Jamar Chase, and recognize that you're going to have to make some changes and adjustments to your defense. I think the Cardinals, Marcos, are intentionally not making these changes to their defense because they're trying to land as high a draft pick as possible. And if we want to take a look at the current draft order, the Arizona Cardinals, as it currently stands, are sitting with the 5th overall draft pick. They are right now moving up one spot due to the Cleveland Browns moving it down. And that's something where we can take a look right here as far as with the Las Vegas Raiders have moved up to the number 1 spot. New York Giants, based off of strength of schedule, are in the 2nd spot. If they win against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday, the Cardinals could move up to as high as 4th. If the Jets win on Sunday, if the Tennessee Titans, the Arizona Cardinals, Marcos, have an opportunity with 3 teams ahead of them. If all 3 teams win, they could be picking 2nd in the 2026 NFL draft, assuming that they lose against the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday. I think it's more likely that the Cardinals are going to be picking in the 4 or 5 range. It seems to be most likely. I don't see them falling back unless for some reason they beat the Rams. This is just one of those places where at this point, all you can really do is just watch the draft order, hope for change, and then hope that the Cardinals are able to find some sort of quarterback to pull them out of this mess that they found them in. And a lot of fans right now, Marcos, do not have very much optimism that it's going to happen. Tough time to be an Arizona Cardinals fan.
Yeah, it really is. Dana, thank you for being in the chat. I really appreciate you also showing up, and you always give great insight and whatnot. One of the things that I always have to mention, yes, exactly, like all 3 comments that she puts up there, I really appreciate her being on here. With the See, this is the reason why I don't put the full blame on someone like Drew Petzing, and the whole Drew Petzing firing thing to me is like, well, you could fire him, you can get rid of him. Who else was going to call the offense? It could have been anybody, right, at that point. But then it would have seemed the same way. Yeah, the only thing it would have given you is it would have given you at the very least, hey, we got rid of him, so now we can bring somebody else in. Well, somebody else is going to probably call the same type of offense because 70% of the NFL calls, the West Coast Shanahan Kubiak offense. So I'm okay with moving off of him, but I don't think that's going to solve everything because you also got to move off of someone like Jonathan Gannon because the culture coming down is what the issue is. If he's
Right.
okay with being in a situation where your owner's coming to you, think about Brian Flores. He has a situation going on with a lawsuit because they asked him to lose games so that they can tank, and he didn't want to do that. Why? Because he knew it was going to take a jab at his culture. Well, guess what? These players are being told, "Hey guys, it doesn't matter how you guys do. Just we're gonna tank and lose games." That's gonna look bad going forward next year when these players are gonna be playing under Jonathan Gannon again, knowing that in this circumstance, hey, we didn't win enough games. None of this stuff matters. What does it matter if I hit somebody hard? What does it matter if and I've seen this on film with some guys just purely giving up. I've seen Froholt do one of the worst like blocks that I've seen when it comes to trying to get somebody on the ground and pushing them and getting them out of the drive. Just coming up to him and just shoving the defender and letting that guy make the tackle on your running back. That's not how people play when they're trying their all. That's somebody that's like, what does it matter? And the effort's just not there.
Yeah, the effort hasn't been there. There's been times where you can see some players who have some good effort, like Michael Wilson, we can talk about, obviously, is continuing to go out there. It's been something that's been very difficult because, like you said, when it comes to seeing how this team has operated and functioned, we can start to see how the losing culture is being built. So I'll show a little bit here, at least, of this is the Cody Ford play that we talk about, at least, where Ford is lined up outside here as a receiver. And look at Denzel. I believe this is Denzel Burke. He just assumes there's no way they're going to throw it there to Ford. They end up actually just getting him a huge amount of cushion that's set up. They actually do throw it to him, but watch the effort afterwards. He just kind of tries to push him out, Number 30, Darren Hall at least doesn't. And it's finally Jalen Thompson is the guy who's actually able to push him out. And they're all celebrating like crazy after the 21-yard pass play. This is rough to watch as a Cardinals fan, Marcos, because it kind of encapsulates a lot of what we've seen from Arizona late this season, where there's just lack of effort, lackadaisical desire from the team, poor tackling angle from Darren Hall. It is one of those areas where it's an embarrassment to be a Cardinals fan when you watch a play like that take place. I do not blame Cardinals fans who, if you're like, I'm a Cardinals fan and I'm on the fence about renewing my season ticket, you watch this game, what do you think they're going to do? Like, I really honestly want to ask Michael Bidwell, what do you think the fans are going to do to respond to all of this? The answer, at least obviously, is you think they're going to buy what you're selling, they're going to continue to support your product, you're going to continue to try to be able to put something out. And the answer is you're probably looking closer to a 2022. And the question, of course, in 2022 was, did you want to stretch it out an extra season with Cliff? Did you take the hard reset? There is a hard reset coming to this Cardinals team. Jonathan Gannon is not going to make it after next season from what we're seeing on film without barring a miraculous sort of shift. And so in that case, you're probably looking at a brand new, fresh start for this team in 2027. Is that going to ruin a new quarterback coming in? Do you have even a shot at getting one of those new quarterbacks? I honestly don't know what more to say or what to do with this, Marcos. All I know is most fans are fed up and are wanting this season to just be over. Chanting Jets, chanting Cardinals fans chanting this Jets, just end the season. I'm excited to be able to go into the offseason, partly, Marcos, because we're going to have to watch some of this lackadaisical effort on film moving forward.
Sorry, I was going to pull up a file. Is that called Little Rock Ledbetter in the chat? He says, hello, friends. We're going to say, I'm saying hello right back to you.
Good to see you, Kyle Ledbetter.
I always enjoy when you guys invite me to the podcast. If that's not you, then I'm sorry about that. The one situation that happens with this whole, hey, we're going to keep him, we're going to stretch it out. Why? So that we know, hey, we're going to go have another losing season, because if we don't get the quarterback that we want, or we're not going to shift the culture and try to get some more wins, the only other avenue is tank again for another year, go get yourself the quarterback of the future, and then have the hard reset happen. Well, what happens when you get that quarterback that you want? There's still an opportunity because of the situation with the Raiders and Max Crosby, taking those videos of him being just fine, even though the Raiders reported him injured. The NFL takes that serious. So if they want to come down with the hammer and take away their first round pick, the Cardinals are suddenly in a position to be able to make a trade to move up. There's a slim chance, of course. I don't think the Raiders, that's a really good organization to go draft someone like Mendoza. But it's like, well, what are we talking about? What do we have going forth for us as well? I mean, we can say that we have a quarterback that we did develop. At the very least, he made the Pro Bowl, and he looked like an MVP candidate for half a season. But the Raiders, it's like they have stood in front of us when it comes to, like, hopefully making that pick. So now we look to, okay, what about next year? Well, then that means we're going to have to lose another year. So you keep Jonathan Gannon, watch this project again for half a year, for an entire season. My sister and her fiance are season ticket holders for, I believe, 10 years straight. They've actually met, they've been part of that Cardinal travel group. They've actually met, like, Michael Bidwell. These guys are thinking to themselves, we're just going to watch it from home now. They're going to go sell off their tickets, and who can blame them?
Yeah, talking at least about season ticket holders, I have not seen as many. Now, a lot of people say there's going to be, and this is how I feel about it. I think that there's going to be still season ticket holders who keep for next year. I think it's going to be 2027 where the actual, like, financial pain will be felt. Like, there's people who are saying, I'm going to get rid of my season tickets. I won't do it again. I'm not going to renew. Some have already renewed for next year. Many have not. Some are going to add on to this year. I think that it's always going to be about a year away. So when you're talking about seeing a huge wave of fans saying that they're not going to renew their season tickets, they're not going to buy tickets to go to the games, there's going to be emptier seats, I think it's always a year away from where you're at to see that change again. And I think that's where a lot of Cardinals fans are saying, all right, well, if this is going to be what Jonathan Gannon is going to put forth, let's say the Cardinals start out 2-4 next year. you are going to see a lot of wave of people saying, all right, this head coach, he promised that there'd be change coming. We're not seeing that change. You got to move on midseason. What I think we need to look for is what can the Cardinals do now to make this season better? And to me, Marcos, it starts with you've got to bring in a veteran defensive guy, someone who's able to, it maybe not be the play caller for Nick Rallis, but be able to essentially be that guy who can be an additional source to the staff besides just Jonathan Gannon. Maybe it's as simple as, hey, Nick Rallis runs the defense, Jonathan Gannon, you're the play caller now. If the plays get messed up, you're the one who's calling the plays. That would be one of those moves that I think a lot of times we see coaches do when they're on the hot seat nearly getting fired. It's not something that the CEO style of head coach that Jonathan Gannon has run has we've seen quite a bit. We've seen that John Harbaugh, for example, with running this model in Baltimore, what he does is pretty simple. Fires a one guy that's there, brings another guy in, or has a good enough unit. That guy gets promoted, goes elsewhere. You're able to make the playoffs, win consistent games. You replace it with another talented person. For me, I think it starts with you're going to have to get someone added because this defense is a problem. And second, I think that the one name that I would look at for the most part is someone who's going to be different. I think if you're going to say, hey, we're going to reach out and get in a Kevin Stefanski when he's fired, we'll get a Frank Reich when he's fired. I think you're going to have to go for someone who is a veteran, experienced play caller who got a team previously to the playoffs. It's not Kevin Stefanski with that one Baker Mayfield year. I'm looking at Brian Daboll and saying this is going to be a vertical, wide receiver heavy offense that can still run the ball effectively and is going to be a different sort of scheme from maybe this typical West Coast heavily favoring the tight end sort of offense, more field stretching that we're going to see. That would be what I would probably say is probably necessary. There's enough familiarity that I think it's going to be able to not be like completely upending the table. Like it's not like you're moving to like say the Sean Payton or the Bill Walsh system. It's still going to be in that kind of West Coast offense mold, but I think it's going to favor the personnel the Cardinals have. I think if you're going to say, hey, let's see, can we move Marvin Harrison Jr. into some of this in and out kind of a role where you're able to see like where we're talking about, can you look at a Greg Dortch as like a Wan'Dale Robinson type, seeing some of the success that was there with the Giants. Now, of course, Daboll got fired this year, and in a lot of ways, he was fired because this was his critical year. This was like his Jonathan Gannon year, the year before. Giants come out, they got the number 2 pick now. That was almost exactly where it was, where things got screwed up. But I think there's a spot where a lot of Cardinals fans, it's not going to be good enough if you bring someone like that in. To me, it's not a spot saying that that'll save it or that'll fix it, but I think you have to do that sort of an extreme move of getting a guy who other teams are coveting to come in and be able to just run that side of the ball. And in the plus side, Marcos, if the Cardinals do lose on the defensive side of the ball with Jonathan Gannon and you're like, we need someone who's going to head coach before someone to right the ship. You got someone who could step into that interim role who's not going to be Drew Petzing, who's not going to be Nick Rallis as a first-time head coach. That can at least be able to take over for whether it's the rest of a tank for that season or take over to potentially right the ship and get a shot to be able to be a head coach of the future. I don't know if that's the move to make, but that is a move, something like that. I don't want to see this Frank Reich, this Kevin Stefanski, some of these guys who have had multiple head coaching shots and have failed. I'm looking for one of those guys at least who is running an effective offense, and part of the reason he got fired was because he kept running his mobile quarterback because his mobile quarterback kept running and lowering his head, kept getting concussed, something that I don't think is fully his fault. I think that was part of what we all took away from this past year was that when Brian Daboll got fired, it was kind of a shock to a lot of people. It wasn't too much of a shock. It just was crazy that he was like the first coach fired to a lot of people, despite the fact he lost Malik Neighbors, they lost Cam Scatterbo. They had kind of been on a success streak, and injuries just kind of took their toll.
Yeah, it's crazy how he turned around the franchise in 1 year when he was there, and then of course after that it was just lowering. Like the record just became the focal point of why he lost his job, and of course getting this new year started and being in a situation where they feel like he's going to kill their quarterback and whatnot. They're trying to protect their guy in Jackson Dart, and I guess I'm not sure if I would 100% buy into somebody like a Brian, like a Brian Dable, because I'm not sure if I even trust him to be that head coach type of person. Maybe his scheme could be better when it comes to a mobile quarterback, because almost every quarterback needs to be a mobile quarterback nowadays to be a successful quarterback. Maybe I can kind of look into that, but I'm not sure if I want him to like develop a quarterback and kind of have him, hey, you're the only guy that I have. This type of offense we're gonna run, and if you're gonna run like a lot of QB option plays with somebody who is gonna be a mobile quarterback and whatnot, the amount of times that he put the pounding on Daniel Jones, and of course Daniel Jones is going to be the ultimate. Like, I believe that Daniel Jones' success was what led Brian Dable to get fired, because as soon as he goes over to Indianapolis, they're like, "Look at him, he's with Shane Steichen, and he's having success immediately. What's going on, Brian? You're supposed to be the QB whisperer."
Yeah.
Maybe he changes him. Maybe he changes some of that. Maybe he is a better upgrade, and yes, he has head coaching experience, so he could take over for the Cardinals need be. And I would give that a better shot than what we have going forth if he was able to come in, and even if Jonathan Gannon gets retained and whatnot, we know that halfway through next season, there's most likely going to be a firing. Like we're all calling it. Hey, you keep Jonathan Gannon, you're just delaying the inevitable, because what are you going to do to the defensive side? Are you going to add a superstar to fix everything? Are you going to draft somebody? You're going to draft somebody on the offensive side.
They just drafted everyone defensive side of the ball this year, and we've seen injuries have definitely played a place. That's one of the things, but a lot of the defense has ultimately been healthy for some of these huge blowouts, and in that case, we've talked about the soft zone defense that the Cardinals have played and how rigorous it needs those guys up front to be. They have not been good enough up front. They've not been good enough at the linebacker spot. And then in the secondary, you at least are able to see that they've got guys who are playing off too far to even make plays on the ball. It's been frustrating, I think, to be able to watch the defensive effort, because it's the one thing that we said coming into this season. Offense has been good. Defense is something that needs to get improved. Defense has gotten worse from where it was a year ago with better talent. And a lot of that, I think, is going to be on the lack of coaching, where I think this is a soft tank job that's turning into a hard tank job that the Cardinals are doing. Like, if you told me that the other teams were there to win and the Cardinals were picking number 2 overall, wouldn't shock me. They look like, right now, Marcos, they've been probably the third worst team in the league, behind the Raiders, behind the Jets. Even the Giants have had a little bit more optimism, and we will see. One of the things that I think we can talk about a little bit here is going to be the placement of where the Cardinals are picking, where the Giants are picking, and how important that will be to their future. Before we get to that, though, it is going to be halftime here on the Red Bird Reboot podcast. Let's go through some of our comments here. We've got Calvin saying that he's a student when the Cardinals came to Arizona. $10 tickets just to watch. Been a lifelong fan since, except for 2009. The team has been disappointing, very frustrating. Totally agree. Mizaki Flick said, since JB took over, the offense has been statistically worse. If you take a look at DVOA metrics, Cardinals were 20th ranked offense with Kyler Murray. They've been the 24th ranked offense with Jacoby Brissett. The running game still had some ability to run with Kyler Murray present. They lost a lot of guys. I think that, honestly, the injuries that we saw, even with Bam Knight and Amari DiMercato, some injuries took place, at least with some of those guys. But having Kyler Murray back there gave them a rushing threat. With Jacoby, there has been no rushing threat. You got Brian saying, getting killed by Joe Burrow didn't bother me as much as other people think it does. I think, honestly, Brian, I would agree with you. If this was, say, a 37-27 sort of game, Cardinals fans probably are like, this defense stinks. But at least the offense was able to have 2 touchdowns to Michael Wilson and 2 touchdowns to Trey McBride. We did not see that. What we saw instead was a very pathetic offensive product and a pathetic defensive product. Part of the Michael Wilson catch and score was a poor lack of tackling on the Bengals' part, unfortunately. We've got Red Feather Workshop, Dana, talking about how with running Shanahan, there's timing and route depth. This is the West Coast offense. The read's not there at the drop. One of the things that we noticed with this year is Jacoby Brissett. It's 3rd and 7. He drops back, gets to the point of the drop, runs forward, and then ends up taking a sack because none of the players are where they're supposed to be. The details are not there with this Cardinals team. And as Dana says, running a timing offense with no understanding of timing is difficult. Brian also thinks that the hard reset is due to the practice facility. Michael Bidwell wants to win the press conference, thinking that they're waiting for 2027 before that hard set holder that's going to be there. And then, of course, the biggest question, I think, at least here, too, is going to be saying, could they not run the ball with Kyler either? No, it's a lame excuse. I don't disagree there, Mizaki. They couldn't run the ball with Kyler either, but Kyler was still averaging, I think, if we take a look at that one, some rushing yards per game. If you want to take a look, and I'll pull up the stats here while we're here in the background. He would at least be able to take off for at least once or twice in terms of his game log. Let's see. This year he had for his rushing 25 yards, 41 yards, 37 yards, 32, 38. So you're talking about, at least on average, that would be about 35 rushing yards per game that Kyler Murray himself would be running for. Now, when it comes to Jacoby Brissett, on the other hand, as far as for rushing yards per game, we're talking about a unmobile quarterback who's going to be taking a lot of sacks this year. So you take a look at his 2025 game logs for rushing. His highest rushing log he got was 22. You take a look at the starts this year. He was 22 against the Raiders, against Atlanta. I think it was, let me pull this up then with the correct dates in mind. First start, at least, was against Indianapolis. He had 19 rushing yards in 26 and then 4. His highest that he saw in the season was 31, but he had -2, 20, 16, 22. At the last 3 games, 6 rushing yards, 5 rushing yards. Against Cincinnati, 0 rushing yards. So you're talking about an average rushing yards or so of about, that's going to be an average of about 15 rushing yards per game. It's probably going to be a little bit lower than 15. So you're talking about a difference of about 20 or so. That's one big play per game that gets you into field goal range, gets you into the red zone, gets you that touchdown. There has been one rushing touchdown this year by Jacoby Brissett. It was that QB sneak against Dallas. Whereas if Kyler Murray had played this year, you're probably going to be seeing that be a little bit better. Now, does that mean that they should have kept Kyler Murray starting? And the answer, I think, for that is, yeah. That's where this all comes back to. It's probably we're going to be losing games with Jacoby, get ourselves in a better shot for quarterback next year. And that, I think, is part of why Cardinals fans have been frustrated, is if you were losing with Jacoby 37-27, okay, I can be content with some of that. If you're losing games with Jacoby 24-20, oh, I can be content with that. If you're losing games with Jacoby 17-13, I can be content with that. Because you're at least being a competitive team that's losing games in a competitive fashion. But whenever the Cardinals have played a team that has a top-notch offense or a top-notch defense, they do not look like a competitive team whatsoever. One of the things that was talked about today when it came to, I believe it was a report from ESPN with Jeremy Fowler, it talked about how the Cardinals have not been a competitive team. He says that, this is the Jeremy Fowler report. I'll pull up for you guys here on the screen. It says that some within the coaching staff are cautiously optimistic that Jonathan Gannon and company are able to survive and make it for another year. Owner Michael Biddle can say, hey, it's a rough season because of injuries. Cardinals have had more players on IR than any other team this year, and a lack of the handpicked quarterback. It was a quarterback they inherited. On the flip side, they are far away from the other 3 teams in the NFC West and simply isn't competitive right now. And Marcos, it's that lack of competitiveness that we've talked about has been the reason why we've been most discouraged with this Cardinals efforts so far this season.
Yeah, I'm going to say that there's some trade-offs when it comes to both, because if you really look at how many times Jacoby Brissett has been sacked in the last 5 or 6 games, it really hasn't been all that much, because if he's not going to find his first read, he's just going to run off, throw it down the field, or he's just going to check it down to somebody. And that's the same thing you could say about Kyler Murray, that he was mostly checking it down. And yes, he does take off. He can run the ball, obviously, but you have the differences between passing yards. Obviously, Kyler Murray was running more. Jacoby Brissett was passing more, and their numbers are different when it comes to that. Also, you got to bring up the fact that, obviously this team was different. When Kyler Murray had him, there's more healthy bodies. There's more of a consistency. When Jacoby Brissett had him, that's when the bodies started dropping. And then the last point that I'm going to make about this situation is that at some point there was a situation where this coaching staff said, if you can't operate the offense by whipping your head around after you're handing off the ball, and if you see a corner route where you're supposed to be able to hit with touch and timing, and you're not going to hit that, and instead you're going to try to evade pressure, you're going to drop your eyes, you're going to try to take off and whatnot. And I've seen this on multiple occasions where I see wide receivers either doing the what is it called, the scramble drill, turning the opposite direction, putting their arms up, or just standing somewhere, wanting to see if Kyler Murray's going to target them, and instead he runs out of bounds and stuff.
Yeah.
They're going to have a little bit of frustration when that situation happens because it's going to come down on the coaches. Think about that. You're watching the broadcast view where you only see the quarterback and you only see the ball. You can't tell what the coverage is or where any of these receivers are at and what they're doing. All you can see is that the quarterback's taking off. A lot of people are going to say, well, you know what? That's because nobody got open. Well, we don't know that for a fact. So there is a trade-off. There is a trade-off, but going forth, I think Kyler Murray would fit better in a, obviously high RPO offense, run QB option like situation where he gets to either hand the ball off or take off, and it's premeditated. It's premeditated. If not, then he makes a choice. I think that's his style of offense. But unfortunately, there's only 30% of the league that runs that.
I think that Kyler's deep ball also, we saw his metrics went from being one of the most efficient and effective deep ball passers to being in the bottom 30 as far as the deep ball after that 2022 wrist injury. I feel like that the Cardinals have been somewhat justified in moving on. But when it comes to the level and caliber of quarterback, I think Kyler's still probably a top 20 quarterback in the NFL. And Jacoby Brissett, as we've seen, can he start for a team? Yeah, he could probably be a top 30 quarterback in the NFL, but there's a large gap between each of those. It's, to me, justified the Cardinals could want to move on. With a shorter quarterback, you're going to be able to keep him into the pocket, be able to just kind of use the mush rush. There's going to be differences as far as being able to see. And with Kyler, he's going to need to have, similar to Russell Wilson, heavy rushing attack, be able to have, like you said, a lot of RPOs, being able to keep everything in front of him. He's not going to be one of the guys who's going to be able to do play action off of turning his back to the defense and turning back around. I think that getting a taller quarterback is something the Cardinals want, and I think it's justified. What I think we've said has been the hardest part of justifying it is it may not be justified because there's no guarantee that said quarterback is going to be better than what you currently have. Now, there's no guarantee it isn't. I think it's just the way the Cardinals have decided to address this whole situation is, all right, in order to get our guy, we're going to commit to this losing culture, and it's going to radically affect the rest of our team and our defense. And people can sit back and forth and argue about Kyler all day long. Kyler is not on the other side of the ball. I think the defense is taking a toll from Jacoby, having 3-and-outs, having some of the sacks, some of the issues we saw previously. But in other cases, it's just going to be simple things that we're looking at for the most part. So like one of the examples we can give here, this is just a simple mesh concept that the Bengals are running. They've got, you can tell, man coverage up over here on the top at least, man coverage down here on the bottom. They're going to snap the ball. They do kind of just a quick blitz bail look, so you're going to be rushing 5 guys. Your goal, at least when you're rushing 5 onto, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the tight end. You're going to be wanting to make sure that with a 5-on-6 sort of a rush, you can get some form of pressure. The Bengals do a good job of keeping up with the pocket. Cardinals do not have a game record. They're able to cover this right off the go, but look at this play call. This is where a play call beats great coverage. 87, Drew Sample just happens to sneak out there. Akeem Davis-Gaither, who is there, realizes it. But look at how long it takes Davis-Gaither to get over. And he's wide open at least. This is one of those areas where scheme beats the play call because you've got man coverage, you run a mesh route. It's a delayed mesh tight end sneak that you're able to run with this, but when it comes to some of these places, it's just a little bit too late where the Cardinals are just not quite in the right spot to be able to make some of these plays. Like in this spot immediately, he's reading the quarterback eyes, he's keeping it in the middle of the field. You got Denzel Burke, and then he just drops it off over here to 87, but you can see once they're running that mesh concept, you got to recognize that mesh concept, get to your spot, because what the entire point of mesh is going to be is trying to be able to beat man coverage. You're going to have to flip it. Davis-Gaither is not able to flip his hips, get back over there and make the tackle. It's just one of those plays, or one, great play call to be able to take advantage of the man concept. Second, is it's just not really great recognition by the linebacker. Once you've got those two guys that are running the opposite ways, all it is it's a mesh concept. You see that again and again at the NFL level. Just get to your spot, make the tackle. Instead, Sample has more than enough time to pick up the first down, and they get out of that spot. It's Darren Hall ends up making the tackle. Another play that we can see, at least over here, is going to be with Cody Ford as the eligible receiver who comes in. That's going to be the sixth offensive lineman. This is just a quick sample pass, just bootlegs out there, and then you can see here, it's just Baron Browning does not get his head around quick enough. They're not anticipating. And then this screen game is just dinking and dunking the Cardinals to death. To me, this is just a little bit of that lack of discipline. You see right here, he just disengages. What do you got to do in this spot? What is it that Baron Browning's got to do in this spot? He's in coverage because you can see at least that they've got ADUs running to take out number 29. So he goes and tries to be able to cover and make the tackle for that one there. He just doesn't whip his hips around well enough, and you're able to see a nice quick gain. And then, of course, this last play that we're going to see here. Let me get to the next play clip here for you guys who are watching. This is just the incomplete deep pass that Denzel Burke made. I believe it was a solid play on the ball. Cardinals, as you can see here, rushing 4, dropping 7. They've got, I believe this is Jordan Birch down here at the side. They're going to basically just be able to try to get forth with, I believe that's going to be Dante Stills. Joe Burrow's dropping back. You see Denzel Burke gets beat deep. He actually comes back, gets his hand up, and is able to make a play on the ball. But this is what it looked like all day with this Bengals offense was. You're giving way too much cushion to these guys off of the line. And then you can see, at least with how the safeties are designed, the double coverage is going right here to the middle of the field. It's going to leave one-on-one coverage, and a lot of that gets is because the pass rush does not get home. You're going to have to, if you're going to affect this Bengals team, you're going to have to get in Joe Burrow's face. You're going to have to be able to mix it up a bit more, because he's just going to read through what your defense is and be able to hit those deep routes, knowing that they can turn your zone coverage in quarters quickly into man coverage just by getting behind you as a defense. And Denzel Burke, at least what we can talk about his play, he looks like he's going to be a corner 2 or corner 3 next year for the Arizona Cardinals. He's had some solid play, gets beat off of that spot, doesn't give up on the play, is able to get his hand in with late hands, break it up. There's some positives we can talk about, at least, that are there, but a lot of it ultimately has been that there's been too many negatives. And in this game, Marcos, a lot of it came down to tackling. I believe it was not this play, but let me get to the one after this play to Io Vicinas, which I believe is the play that gets us to Jamar Chase. This is the one on Will Johnson in the deep middle of the field that was followed up by... And this is one of those plays where he's lined up one-on-one. Will Johnson, he doesn't get his hands on him because he just separates, but he's able to keep back in his pocket. He's able to keep up with it, and then he just runs away from him. This is where Will Johnson is, I think, going to, in one hand, I would say get a little bit closer, try to get hands on him. This is a good release. The second, he is just having to trail him the whole time. There is not really that much safety help. It needs to kind of break down a little bit sooner is probably one of the cases. We'll have to see what the coverage is. It's just something where this is a learning lesson for Will Johnson of how good the releases for Jamar Chase is. You can't really stop him. You have to contain him. I think that this is the 4-yard play that Will Johnson did a good job in coverage on, where he was able to, as he went back, just went over the middle of the field. Will Johnson just quickly was able to wrap up, take him down. Will Johnson did not have issues with his tackling. This is the play that we're talking about where it felt like that the game was going to be there. Jamar Chase is lined up with Darren Hall on the one side. You're going to see at least that they've got, I believe that Will Johnson's lined up way over in like the safety position. You got one missed tackle there by Burke, a quick spin move on Darren Hall, who's not able to move, and it's an immediate touchdown. This is what we're talking about with as far as with tackling and injuries. 1, Darren Hall shouldn't probably be out there, Marcos. And 2, it's just one of those places, at least, where you need to put forth some more effort. If you're a Cardinals player, run through the player and make that tackle. Instead, it's given up for a touchdown.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about with coaching. And by the way, on that Denzel Burke breakup, that should have been a touchdown. Joe Burrow did not target the receiver on the run. He allowed the cornerback to be able to come back into the play. That's what we talk about when we talk about hitting the guy in stride and whatnot. That's a touchdown because Denzel Burke bit on the double move. You saw the post taking away the safety to clear that route out. So that should have been a touchdown. It wasn't. good on Denzel Burke for not giving up on the play, but that's not something that I would just hang my hat and say, hey, you shouldn't have allowed him to get you on that double move. You did recover, but it's just like simple situations like that. And of course, when it comes to tackling, these guys are not like the technique that they should be using is more so of like getting down low, like I'm not sure if you seen the one about like the video of Brett Coleman when he was going about Bob Sanders, and it came to like showing him how low he got to the ground and then was able to not give up any yardage when he met a running back or a wide receiver that may be even 20 to 30 pounds heavier than he is, 6 inches taller than him. He's not giving up any like yardage or having him push him back because he gets down low like a tree stump and then is able to drive himself upwards. You're not going to be able to get that way. I understand. You're not going to be able to always get that way. But that's just a proper technique you should be showing. Your defensive backs in practice, your linebackers in practice, and too often than not, this is what they want to do on defense. This is what they continue to do. Hey, we're gonna run heavy zone schemes. It's just gonna be cover two, cover. It's gonna be cover. It's gonna be cover three on first down. We're gonna run Tampa 2 or cover 2 on second and third down, mixed in with some cover 3 and whatnot. We're gonna have our people essentially be more off the ball, and if we put them close to the line of scrimmage, our cornerbacks are going to start using their bail technique a little bit sooner than what it should be in the down, instead of trying to hit these guys at the line of scrimmage, teach them how to jam people properly and turn their hips and go. They keep drafting that same position as well. 5'10" cornerbacks with 4.3 speed that are not being taught how to tackle in a proper way. Instead of getting like 6'1" cornerbacks who can survive in both man coverage and zone coverage, they're not allowing these guys to they're not getting the right personnel for what they should be doing, because they just want to have these cornerbacks off the ball, because what they want to do is they want to get the same four that they used to have with the Eagles, and that's where success lies. Hey,
Yeah.
these guys get to the quarterback.
Yeah, it is brutal, I think, at least for Cardinals fans. And there's not a lot of things that are there if they keep it with it going forward. Let's wrap up our show with overtime over here. We're talking a little bit here. We've got Dana talking about fundamentals as like inconceivable, at least unfortunately. Brian says that even Buda Baker doesn't tackle like he used to anymore. We've seen this year Buda's been used in the two safeties deep role because they've been wanting to run more quarters coverage, keeping four guys up front. Instead of what we saw was a lot more unique defense that was able to put Buda where I think he's at his best, of blitzing off of the line, picking up and run defense. Instead, we've seen him back in coverage, which has not been his strong suit, especially when he's approaching 30 years of age. Muzaki Felix is saying this is a coaching staff problem on offense and defense, saying that the defense can't play. The OC cannot adjust his scheme to the personnel. They're inflexible. One of the things we've talked about, too, has been we've got a brutal setup where whoever the X receiver is, they can get targets. The Z receiver, they get occasional deep shots. We saw those two flip in this game where Marvin took on the Z role, got a deep shot he wasn't able to pull in, and they got Michael Wilson into that X receiver role. They just don't have the ability to adapt, and it becomes predictable week in and week out to how it worked for that one. We got a super comment there from Dane to say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, a great Festivus, lots of strength, success for our Happy New Year. Thank you so much, at least again, for that, Dana. Red Feather Workshop, appreciate that. There's a lot of people, at least, who are looking at with how MHJ, at least, is how is he going to play? I think leading a new offensive coordinator, he said the same offensive coordinator the past 2 years. That I think is going to be definite for this year. One of the things that we're wanting to talk about, Marcos, is going to be, we'll be back here next week after the Cardinals are playing the Rams. Do you have any comments about that game? Because from what we know, the Rams seem like they're going to be locked into the 5th seed. They still have something to play for. If they do lose to the Cardinals, there's a chance they fall back to the 6th seed. The Packers, they're locked into the 7th seed. So really right now, it kind of seems like you're talking about the Seahawks and the 49ers are playing to get the 1 seed. The Chicago Bears are playing to get the 4 or the 5 seed with the Los Angeles Rams. And then the 2 seed, of course, as we're talking about, is going to be locked up already, it looks like, with, I believe that is the I think it's either the Eagles, or I have to remember what the other division is for the playoff picture. But I would expect the Rams to play their starters. Do you see any reason why the Cardinals could potentially ruin some of their chances and get a win? And then we'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing with the mock draft situations for the Arizona Cardinals and a little hope for Cards fans.
Well, what I have for this game is it's really not going to matter what the Cardinals do. Of course, if they go ahead and do what they probably should have done all season and win this last game, which is going to just push us back. Yeah, I mean, don't expect that to happen because Sean McVay has he has coached his team not to let the foot off the pedal. He might pull up some players. He might not even have Matthew Stafford out there, but his offensive line is superb when it comes to run blocking. So expect there to be a lot of yardage. Expect there to be no change when it comes to like handling personnel. But I see Mizaki pointing out with the offensive scheme, like it's also a defensive scheme. They don't adjust in not on either side of the ball. This scheme on both ends of the football is exactly the same from the beginning to the very end. And I wouldn't just blame the offensive coordinator when it comes to like the wide receiver woes because they are running the routes. They are running the routes that I've seen people. I mean, wide receivers from the Minnesota Vikings, wide receivers from the San Francisco 49ers and whatnot. What's not being done here is that these guys are not ascending past to what they need to be when it comes to like the wide receiver the route running specifics when it comes to like what kind of release you're gonna do at the line of scrimmage, how tight do you have to do when you're about to turn, and these type of techniques usually the wide receivers coach is also involved when it comes to that. So if you clean house and you get a different personnel in here that goes from the offensive coordinator, it goes to the wide receivers coach. I mean, I don't know about the tight ends coach if you really want to make a change there. Obviously, both Higgins and Trey McBride have been really good at being able to catch the ball, obviously turn and be able to do the type of techniques that our wide receivers should be able to do. So when we get a different type of offensive philosophy, maybe these offensive coordinators are going to be different. They're going to teach everything differently. I believe that maybe Fry might be retained, so the offensive line is going to have the same type of at least specialist there. So we can look forward to see if there's any change, just due to the fact that you're going to get a shot on the arm from having a different type of scheme and hopefully different type of head coach.
Yeah, I think that's something at least is that we are not certain. We can talk a little bit more about how it seems like Jonathan Gannon is in trouble, but it does feel like, at least in a lot of different ways, that there is a possibility that he and the Arizona Cardinals end up moving in separate directions. It might be that the Cardinals said you got to win one or two games down the stretch, show some progress, and the Cardinals simply are not able to do that. That's something that we'll have to find out. Let's go ahead here and talk a little bit about some positivity. So let's go ahead and, like we said, the Cardinals moved up to the top 5 in the NFL draft. And one of the questions, at least, that popped up, of course, was not giving up on MHJ yet, but he's becoming worrisome with the injuries, with the coordinator. I think getting in the new OC, if you can get someone who's from a different philosophy, who's able to use him, like, as we know, Brian Dable previously, when he was the head coach of the Giants, he was grading and looking at different players. He saw MHJ when he was running at the Ohio State Pro Day. He was like, oh my gosh, wow, like I can make use of this guy. Giants ended up actually not taking MHJ. We don't know if they would have. They took Malik Neighbors, who did show off and had a very good athletic profile, but has also gotten hurt with being a little bit of a smaller guy. We'll see how he works with next year. Let's go ahead and we're going to flip up and show the mock drafts here. So this is something where when we're talking about this is from tankathon.com, how they're projecting things to play out, and we'll see. So if Dak Prescott does not play the entire time, there is a possibility, Marcos, that the New York Giants, if they win, they would fall all the way back to the 7th pick. That would push the Cardinals up to pick 4. The Jets would be pushed up to pick 2, and the Titans would be pushed up to pick 3. I think that if you're a Cardinals fan, you are rooting for the Dallas Cowboys this week, because even if the Cardinals get pushed up into the top 4, you're going to be talking about a quarterback needy team at 1 and then a quarterback needy team at 2 in what seems to be a 2 quarterback draft. Cardinals have seemingly really liked Ty Simpson, is what was reported as of today from Josh Weinfuss internally. I will say this personally. Yes, I think the Cardinals do like Ty Simpson. I also think that the Cardinals are going to say that they love Ty Simpson if they like the other 2 quarterbacks more, not only because if they say we like these 2 quarterbacks and they don't get one of those 2, and then when it comes to quarterback, teams are especially highly sensitive, highly secretive. They do not want teams to know anything. So it would not shock me whatsoever if the Cardinals are like, hey, we love Ty Simpson, and they've been shooting offers to the Raiders to try to get it for Fernando Mendoza. That would not shock me whatsoever. I think you're rooting for the Dallas Cowboys to win so that the New York Giants, who right now already drafted a quarterback last year, do not have to worry about one. There is a also chance that the Jets could pass on quarterback this year, say, you know what, we're going to be bad next year no matter what. Cardinals are desperate because they've got a new regime change. Maybe the Jets change out their coach and they get a whole season to work with. Maybe Aaron Glenn is a guy who gets his second season and they just know they're not going to be good. They sold a bunch of players, sold a bunch of talent. There is zero playoff expectations for the New York Jets for next year. They've got tons and tons of draft picks. If they wanted to pick at number 1 or number 2, they could flip those draft picks to trade up in there. Maybe they say, hey, you know what? There's a quarterback that's going to be there on the board for us. We know that the Arizona Cardinals are afraid the Titans are going to trade back and someone else will take it before them. We can charge the Cardinals. They'll jump up and play ball with us to get one of those other top 2 quarterbacks. Or if the Giants end up saying a team like the Cleveland Browns offers far too much to jump up into that spot, we can also offer the Cardinals to jump up a little, get your Ty Simpson right there. I'll say this, Marcos. I think that if you're a Cardinals fan this year, there is one other option that you have, which would be recognizing you may suck next year, trading back from the number 5 spot, and being able to potentially look at getting an offensive lineman of the future. That would be, I think, the secondary option as far as it goes. But I think this is going to be a year the Cardinals are looking at quarterbacks heavily. And if they don't, then I think that it is a possibility that we do see one of these other teams jump ahead of them, and Arizona is the team that then trades back. Any thoughts that you have about the current draft process? And I'll give a little bit on some questions that people have had as far as for some of the other positions as well.
Well, I would like to go in the direction of possibly just like, if you're going to keep Jonathan Gannon, don't draft the quarterback. If you're not going to keep him, then you go ahead and get somebody who's up and coming, at least somewhat like an offensive coordinator. We all know it's probably going to be a non-offensive coordinator, a head coach on the offensive side. We all know it's most likely going to be a first-time play caller. If that's not the case, and we get somebody like Brian Dable to be the head coach, and
no first-time play callers, please. If you have to, then just move on from Jonathan Gannon, and let's build around a new first-time offensive play caller with a new regime if you're going to, please.
Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
hope.
I would be higher when it comes to like a quarterback, and maybe even like trading like the future to try to get like at least Fernando Mendoza, because I've asked myself this question. The 2027 class is better than this class, but the issue is going to be that you're going to have to tank again to try to get your
Right.
own like quarterback, and it's like the Cardinals were offset by like a couple of years where maybe they could have grabbed the quarterback. Hell, they could have gotten Tyler Shuff from last year in the second round when he fell in the second round to try to be that quarterback of the future. He's looking he's looking like he's developing well. Maybe
Offensive coach in New Orleans. They've got at least some talent with Chris Olave has been able to blossom into place. He's looked a lot better. Hasn't been getting concussions like he was with Derek Carr. Just areas to consider, at least if you're the Cardinals. Like, we're wanting to have this offensive head coach that comes in to develop a quarterback. We haven't seen quarterbacks develop with Jonathan Gannon in the CEO model, and it's as good as the guy that Gannon brings in. So that's why I'm curious. Who's the new OC going to be? Who's in charge of whatever quarterback? Because even if you do start out with Jacoby Brissett, you got to bring in some future hope or prospect next year. Otherwise, like you said, you're tanking for 2027, and maybe that is the third door the Cardinals could potentially have, Marcos.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just going to be a situation where we're going to have to sit here and watch us like tank and have another horrible year. And who knows what kind of records we're going to break. I mean, I thought this was like the worst season by far that we've had. And 2018 was supposed to be that type of a season. And now we're looking at like, hey, we set a record for how many penalties we've had in a game. We've given up 40 points on multiple occasions. Our offense is like not clicking at its highest way, and you have a defensive-minded head coach who can't get his defense to rank higher than 20th.
Yep, it's unfortunate to be said. Let's go through a little mock draft simulation over here where we've got the Arizona Cardinals are the ones that we're picking for. We're going to go ahead here and take a look at the draft order. So, Marcos, let's say that the Arizona Cardinals are able to move up in a trade with the number 2 pick to the Giants. Giants end up picking 5th then as well. That's pretty easy. Right now, Fernando Mendoza is favored to pick at number 1. Do you think that you like Dante Moore, or do you like, uh, I would say, Fernando Mendoza better from what you've seen of those quarterbacks? From what I've seen, Moore has, I think, a little bit higher as far as for some of the range of the outcomes. I don't know about his deep ball as well as I do with the arm strength for Mendoza, but Mendoza, he's got size. He's got the ability to move. Some people look at him and say he's a little more like a Kirk Cousins or a Jared Goff, but with a little bit more live arm. And I think that when it comes down to it, there's a lot of Cardinals fans who would be in huge favor of taking a guy with Fernando Mendoza, not just, I think, because of just some of the ties. I had someone who told me the other day who said, oh, with the last name Mendoza, of course Michael Bidwell, he'll want that to sell jerseys. I'm like, okay, well, stereotyping a bit, you got to watch the guy play. I think that it wouldn't shock me if Dante Moore goes at number 1 overall from what I've seen of him, and that Mendoza ends up being looked at like the secondary guy in this class. I could see that flipping potentially with the offseason process. I think that if you're going to get a quarterback, I would take either of those guys ahead of Ty Simpson. From what I've seen of Simpson so far, I've got questions about his vertical ball over the middle of the field. Also, when the pocket gets muddy, he's had a good offensive line in Alabama. He has made a lot of quality throws, though. So it's like it's one of those places where this is not the strongest of quarterback classes. I do think that you can always say, oh, 2027 will be better, unless you're taking an Arch Manning in that draft. And we all have seen Arch Manning struggled a lot this year. He's not a guarantee. Had a great game against Texas A&M to finish. You're in a spot where are any of these guys going to be a better prospect than Kyler Murray? Maybe not, but at least you're able to get some change. And what we see with change in the NFL is it does lead to usually teams being able to pick up and win a bit more. I think if you're in this spot, Marcos, I think it's pretty easy if you end up trading up to be able to get Fernando Mendoza. Do you have any differences in opinion so far about some of the Cardinals' options at the quarterback spot?
If we get Fernando Mendoza at the second overall pick, I think that would be a win if we traded up with the Giants and got, and we got aggressive for once to be able to get who we want as our guy. I'm not going to say that I'm the biggest Fernando Mendoza fan, but I'm going to say that like I like the size, I like the leadership, I like the type of qualities that he brings on as far as like leading a team in Indiana, from what I hear, wasn't even a powerhouse type of team. And not only did they win, I forget what conference they're in, but they win the championship. I believe it was versus the Big Ten championship versus the Ohio State Buckeyes, the team that we're constantly attached to when it comes to college. But to be able to lead them on to the playoffs, that's a pretty impressive feat when it comes to like taking a team that was nothing into something.
And that's why I think there's a very good chance that he could go at number 1 overall as well. So let's take a look at that. If he does go at number 1 and at number 2, you're looking at, let's say that Dante Moore, could he go back to school with Oregon? That's possible. Could Ty Simpson stay at school? Let's take a look at least with the Cardinals, and let's say that you're standing put and standing pat. If you're not able to trade up, here's where I think you're standing at. So you've got quarterbacks go at pick number 1, pick number 3, Arvell Reese, who is probably going to be one of the better pass rushers, but he is not really developed as far as being used on the edge. I would honestly consider Caleb Downs in a trade down. He seems like at the Cardinals, from what we saw on Sunday, their safety without Buda Baker and with how their team plays, being able to get a stud athlete would make a lot of sense at the position. You've got people who are going to look at Carnell Tate. Jordan Tyson's going to be really interesting, dependent on how the injuries play out. Ruben Bain is someone who the way that he kind of stacks up is he's unique because he's 273 pounds, acts like a prototypical like defensive lineman, but he's got really short arms. So he would kind of have to be on the edge at 270. So he doesn't project like a Chandler Jones type, doesn't project like a interior, I'm sorry, this is killing me at least for this year, Walter Nolan type. Sonny Styles is someone who a lot of people have said that he looks like he's been a top player at linebacker, but he's been more of an inside linebacker. In this scenario, Marcos, you know what I kind of feel like? I kind of feel like you grab an edge rusher, have an identity to say, we're going to rush at you with Josh Sweat, we're going to rush at you with David Bailey, And that's going to be our identity, is that we're going to be a defensive team that's going to rush and get after the quarterback in a way the Cardinals, with what we've loved about the ability and coverage and run defense that we've seen from having gosh, it's certainly sorry, this is escaping me at least right now, with the first round draft picks that they've had. We have not been able to see the Cardinals have an elite pass rush, and that's something that I think that they need to have in order to be able to succeed. It's Zaven. I was trying to remember the last name, but Zaven Collins is the guy who is just not an elite pass rusher. He's a good run defender. He can hold up in coverage on the edge, but that would be the spot that I would go to. I also would look and consider, if I'm the Cardinals, can I get a trade back? So let's say that you get to the top 5. Do you have a trade back? So you've got, let's say, the Kansas City Chiefs. I would look at trading pick number 5 and 9. Can I get the Chiefs, thinking the Chiefs are going to bounce back next year, right? That could be a late first round pick. Can I get the Chiefs to say, trade up, give me your first round pick. I'll send you back a third round pick. All of a sudden, I drop back to pick number 9. I take a look at who's going to be there on the board. I can get Spencer Fano from Utah, fix my right tackle situation for the future. And all of a sudden, I've got 2 first round picks for next year. I've got my right tackle. I can go out next year and trade up to get my quarterback of the future in a draft where maybe I wasn't able to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks this year. Maybe a Dante Moore or Ty Simpson or both go back. Maybe I can't get all of that haul because someone else is able to trade up, but I can at least address some needs, get a late first round pick. Maybe the Chiefs stink next year and ends up being higher than we think, and get a right tackle of the future. That would be the other option I would look at if I was Arizona. And we'll run plenty more mock drafts, at least for the most part, but just a little bit of positivity and optimism when it comes to it. I think the Cardinals are in a good spot this year. They could potentially move up and get a quarterback, or potentially move back, get that right tackle of the future, and maybe even get a high draft pick for next year.
I mean, that is the great hope, of course, that we can position ourselves in a good place to be able to like be in a situation where we get 2 first round picks to be able to help our rebuild. Not only that, but give us more weapons to be able to move up. If in case we do not draft quarterback this year, we have more weapons to be able to draft for quarterback next year.
Absolutely. That'll wrap it up here for us on the Redbird Reboot podcast. So we want to make sure that we wish you all a happy new year this year, guys. We're super excited, at least, to be able to have the end of the year. Obviously, make sure that you guys are following the Cardinal Rule on YouTube. Make sure you're following me and Marcos on our X accounts. I'm at Blake Murphy 7. Marcos, if you want to pitch where our viewers are able to find you and your content.
Well, you can go ahead and find me on X at Pancake Soul, and also you can find us the TCR umbrella on YouTube. The Cardinal Rules, where you can find us.
Yep. Make sure you're following at Redbird Reboot. We'll have all of our live shows we publish there on X.com as well. This has been the Redbird Reboot podcast. It's been a heck of a 2025. Just been a hell of a season to endure for Cardinals fans. There is hope on the other side in the position that they are going to be seeing some draft picks potentially coming in to boost the team. We'll find out also what the status of Jonathan Gannon is. We'll be back here on Black Monday, probably with a reaction show. Whether he stays, whether he goes, is anyone else stay or go? We'll be here to react to it all on the Redbird Reboot podcast. Thanks again, everyone. Take care and stay safe for this evening, as it is New Year's Eve, so make sure that you are being responsible. And we're going to log off here for the last time in 2025.
Stay safe, people. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys. Take care.